Okay, joining us now is our 5-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion and a 7-time winner here at Dover. I was looking at your stats the other day here at Dover, and I just sat down after I looked at those. You won 4 out of the last 8 races here, led 54% of the laps during that period of time. But it's Jimmie Johnson. He drives the number 48 Lowe's Cobalt Tool Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports. Excuse me. He's our points leader. He's won 3 times on the season. And Jimmie, I know after you came out of New Hampshire with a strong showing there and got the points lead, and looking on the schedule, you saw Dover up ahead. That had to be a pretty good feeling for you.
Yeah, we're definitely excited to be here at this racetrack. As you mentioned, the stats are very good for myself and this team here. It's a track that I enjoyed racing at from my very first lap here in an ASA car. So glad to be here. I'm very happy with the start that we've had of the season. Chicago went really well for us, and then obviously last weekend in Loudon to run second there was a strong showing as well. So things are working well. Clearly 8 more races to go, and we'll just keep working hard and see what we can do.
And Jimmie, I'm going to ask the first question. What is it about Dover that you're able to really hone in on, and what about this racetrack has made you so successful here?
I think out of all the oval tracks we race on, this one is most similar to my off-road background. The drop-off into the corner, the way that rubber lays down and you have to select a different line through the turn kind of reminds me of dirt racing. And then you've got to climb back up that hill and jump up onto the straightaway and then go do it again and again and again. So I think that's really where things work the best for me. Good
deal. All right, let's start way in the back. David Newton, raise your hand, and we'll get you the mic, and then up here to Lee. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Jimmie, I've got 2 questions if I can. The first is nobody that's ever led the points after Dover has gone on to win the championship. You think that's just coincidence or anything to that at all?
No, there's not much to it. I think the point in that is that it's a long season and a lot can happen, but you want every point you can get, and leading now is a great position to be in. I think any champion of the however many years of the chase would take leading out of Dover.
And the other thing I wanted to ask, Kurt Busch just left here and was talking about making the chase next year with the Furniture Road Racing team. Do you think that team is capable, and do you think the chase in general just needs the Busch brothers in there?
Well, I don't know enough about the 78 team to understand their equipment, the engineering staff, and what goes into it. In the past, and it could still be the case, but I know they had a relationship with Childress, and you'd have to think that whatever relationship they have is key in what type of information they get and what they can really afford to spend on that relationship is key. So we'll see. Time will tell. Kurt does an awesome job. I think he's shown again this year how talented he is, and we'll see. And as far as a Busch brother in the chase, again, I'm shocked that Kyle's not in, a lot like probably he is in the rest of the racing community. He's a definite threat week in and week out, and as Kurt finds his way back into highly competitive equipment, he'll be a factor as well.
Okay, let's go to Lee and then to Jim.
Lee Spencer, Fox Sports. I'm not sure whether or not you've heard it yet, but Chris Economaki passed, and I just wanted to get your opinion on what he meant to racing in general with all the different forms of racing that you've participated in.
Yeah, I did see that this morning, and definitely sad news. At 91 years of age, he did so much for all of motorsports, and I think many generations of race fans, racers, and everybody in between has an Economaki moment and remembers hearing his voice, seeing him on television, maybe meeting him. Everything he's done for motorsports is. Clearly I can't thank him now, but I'm just so thankful for what he contributed to our sport and his passion and dedication for our sport.
Okay, let's go to Jim.
Jim Noble, ESPN and Sirius XM. Little 2-parter here for you. First part, just if you were another chase driver, Kerry mentioned your record here, and if you were some guy sitting down and looking at your record at this track, would you be worried? Can you put yourself in their shoes and say, "Oh my goodness, we're coming to Dover and look at Jimmie Johnson here"?
Yeah, I think we all look at other drivers and where they where they excel, and you know that you're going to have to deal with that team and driver. And last week was a good example of it. We all knew going in, based on the spring race, that Denny was going to be the car to beat at New Hampshire, and they did that. So, you know, we all look through stats, and I'm not sure that a long history plays into things, but certainly a spring race is one that you pay attention to.
And just follow up on a different topic. You know, Dale Jr. was obviously not happy after really Chicago or New Hampshire, and he said he's been very hesitant to be vocal about the issues towards his team, his teammates. He doesn't want to be complaining all the time. Have you noticed anything in him? Have you given him any advice in how to go about expressing, you know, your displeasure when times are tough and you feel things need to be done immediately?
You know, I'm not in the conversations that he and Steve have. There are different layers that the drivers share, you know, different experiences we have together in debriefs at the track and during the week. And as a shop mate, there's a lot of communication that he and I have. And I've not seen him this open and willing to communicate ever. So from my standpoint, I've been very impressed with his ability to communicate what he said, the information that he's providing, the direction he's helped the 48 car with, and the overall team, in bringing some stuff, you know, in the summer months to the table. So I'm sure he's not happy with his opening 2 races, but I've been really proud of him and feel that he's been an amazing teammate and really has offered and added a lot to Hendrick Motorsports this year.
Other questions for Jimmy? Looks like Jim Utter's got one. Okay, then we go to Claire. Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Utter, Charlotte Observer. A lot of people always point to your record here, Jimmy, and as people were talking about earlier, assume that it's a great place for you and you're going to have success. But can you talk a little bit from your perspective? I'm assuming Chad just doesn't come here thinking you're going to be good again every time you show up. How much work does it take to be that good again when you do come back here?
Yeah, it does take a lot of work, and what's confusing is this track does change quite a bit. With the tire that we've had for the last couple of years, it lays a lot of rubber down, and the way your car handles on a clean track during practice is far different than what you have in the race. And you know, practice, even though we've won here recently and a couple times, you know, I can't say those practice sessions went as smoothly as we would hope, and you really have to fall back on experience and keep an open mind about the new pieces you bring or the new thoughts you bring to your setup, and will they work come race time. You know, they might not work on a clean track, but the race is really different, especially deep in a run when the right side rubber lays down, and you've got to navigate that stuff.
Go ahead, Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Denny Hamlin's sports psychologist has told him he's got to learn to love Dover. And I was talking to Joe Theismann on the air last night about whether quarterbacks and football players, you know, it's different than racing, but they go to a football field. He said, oh, yeah, the wind blows a certain way. You don't like a certain football field. You think you can't throw there. Have you learned to love a track? You know, does it take a sports psychologist to kind of help you through that, or you deal with that yourself if you came to a place you didn't used to be able to think you were good at?
Yeah, I mean, we all have those tracks that we don't like, or don't like us, however you want to phrase it and work through it. But I've, believe me, for years and years, I went to Bristol telling myself I loved it, and I didn't love it until I won there. The same with Sonoma. So, you know, until you go to that track and prove to yourself that you run well there, it's just a lot of positive thinking, which does have its benefits. But for myself personally, until I've gone to those tracks and I've executed, and I come back the next year and walk in the gate, that's when the feeling is truly different. You're like, wow, you know, I am good here. I can get the job done here.
Got time maybe for one more. Any more questions? Let's go all the way back to Nate, and we'll end with Steve.
Nate Ryan, USA Today. Jimmy, besides meeting the Avett brothers, you were in New York this week, I assume. Was that like a planned trip, and is that just like a getaway when you go up there and spend a few days? Is it because of the proximity to this place, or is that kind of like a way that you kind of give yourself a diversion during the stress of the chase?
It's really more driven by where we're racing. You know, we have an apartment in the city, and try to get up there and enjoy it as often as we can, which really isn't much as the year rolls on. So the fact that we're racing up this direction between Loudon and Dover, and it worked out well for us to be up there and enjoy the city. And I had a great time at the Avett Brothers. It's cool to see some Concord guys or Charlotte guys have the success they do, and watch them in action. They put on a heck of a show. And distractions like that are helpful. It helps keep my mind off of things. And the other aspect that's been beneficial for me is the training, getting ready for this next triathlon. I think that's been a good way to hit the sheets exhausted every night and make sure that I get the rest that I need to and my mind doesn't wander. So I'm learning a lot as the years go on, and how to feel complete with the day, doing my job, staying focused on my job, and also having some fun and balancing things out. So concerts an example of it, and then also family time. And one nice thing about going to New York is that no one can track me down from the racing world, really, and I can separate, and have had some awesome days with Shani and Evie.
Go ahead, Steve. Final question.
Steve Richards of PRN. Something you might not want to think about, Talladega. You've won there, you've crashed there. What's it like to be in a wreck at Talladega? The sights and sounds, obviously, we'll never experience that. What goes through your mind, and what happens during a crash?
For me at Talladega, when something happens, you start kind of evaluating the damage to your car. And if there's a couple small bumps along the way, your mind's thinking, okay, that's not too bad. Didn't get hit in a wheel, maybe just fender. We can fix that. And you're keeping some hope until typically there's a moment where you're like, oh, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna require some behind the wall time to fix that up. So you just kind of hang on, go for the ride, and I've been fortunate to stay on my wheels and not be upside down. So I don't necessarily have a good play on that. Although it'd be kind of cool to flip. If you're gonna go out, you may as well go out in style. But you just kind of evaluate what's going on and hope that you don't hit anything too hard, and you can get to pit lane and get it fixed.
What does it sound like, though?
It usually gets quiet at some point. The engine shuts off as you get close to backwards or sideways. A lot of tires squealing. When tires blow, they make a lot of noise, a big explosion. And depending on the impacts, they all have different sounds as well. But first sound you usually hear is the guy on the throttle hard trying to steer it or drive it in the right direction.
Jimmie, thanks for coming in, and good luck this weekend.
Thanks.